Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mike's Musings. I wanted to put this together to help individuals that might stumble across it if they're working with a computer and a hard drive or something that might be set up as a RAID 0 or striped or spanned volume. These are things I've just learned prior to recording the shoot when I try to fix my work computer. So I'll give you a little backstory. I turned on my work computer and it just would not boot up. Not sure why. Went to the HP community forums and I kind of went through a number of different troubleshooting steps, basically where hard resetting, reseating memory, checking connections on the hard drive. Turns out none of those worked. So I called my IT department. They attempted to help me, similar to what I went through that was posted on the community forums, and they decided just to call a HP tech. So basically where I live in Florida, they have a contract with a company that will come out to fix HP computers. So that being said, it took a while for that person to get there. I don't like to wait. I had a lot of important stuff on my computer. Yes, I know I should have probably backed up a lot of things too and used cloud drives. Hindsight's 2020. So I still needed to fix the problem. So I opened up the back of the computer and I noticed that in the computer there was this little PCB board, printed circuit board. And it turns out this is an actual solid state drive. I didn't know that. And it's actually what they call an M.2 solid state drive. It's the type of drive it is. I might not be using all the correct terminology, but enough to be dangerous. This is where the main partition was for the operating system. So I pulled this out, and I had another drive inside the computer, and I'm just going to show you this dock, and I'll get to this in a moment. But this is basically a USB 3.0 dock that can take hard drives in SATA type connections, so I could actually get data off these drives. But I had two of these drives, which are two 500 gigabyte drives. These were spanned, basically striped to a 1 terabyte volume in my operating system. That's where most of my data was. So this just had the operating system partition on it. So I was really interested in getting this data. Being that this was spanned, you can't just plug it in and expect to get data off. It doesn't work. So what I did, now that I've repaired my computer, the other drive is actually a functioning storage drive in the computer. So this is what's left over. I have another one here. But what I had to do was take both of these drives, plug them into this dock, hook it up to my computer, and then I had another SSD laying around. I installed that into the computer, and I basically installed a Windows 10 operating system on that. What that basically meant so far is that the computer and the motherboard are working as expected. So most likely the problem is with the controller for this, which is on the motherboard, or this device failed. So I get that all working, still haven't gotten a call from HP yet, and reinstalling my software and my drivers, basically just getting the machine up to speed. About 3 days later, I get a call from HP asking to come out. So I said, okay, what are you coming out with? He was ready just to say, I'll be available and show up. And I said, no, what are you coming out with? And he's like, I'm coming out with a motherboard. And I said, do you have one of these type of drives? And I gave the terminology, the M.2 SSD. And he was like, no. So you might want to order one of those before coming out. And he's like, all right, whatever. So he orders one, and I gave him the part number, and I had to wait another day. So now I'm waiting another day. Comes out, and I have the computer open, ready for him. As soon as he sees the computer, he's like, oh, no. He goes, they sent me the wrong part. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I gave you the part number. How can they send you the wrong part? He's like, oh, yeah. So right away, I'm gauging the technical expertise of this HP technician that is supposedly knowing how to fix my computer. So we open up the part, he plugs it in, and then he hands me the computer. And I'm like, okay. So I took over from that point. Basically went into the BIOS, configured and enabled the PCIe M.2 device in the configuration. The computer boots up. That's a good sign. There was no problem with the controller. I get into Windows 10, go to the disk management, right click, and all I have to do is initialize the drive and then create a volume, a simple volume. So I have like an extra drive. Lo and behold, I now have an extra 250 gigabyte drive within my computer. So everything's up and running. So the moral of that part of the story is that you're going to have to do a lot more work yourself and try to do the research and identify what you think might be wrong with it. Don't always depend on the experts to try to help you, because if I would have just let this go, I would have been waiting for this part after they discovered that the motherboard worked, and they would have put this bad drive back in the motherboard, and we would have had the same problem. Okay, so that was an experience that I definitely don't want anybody else to have to deal with. Now the other part of this is, now I mentioned I was able to get my data off the drives. Okay, so not this drive, this is another drive I have, but 2 of these drives. It took me almost, I would say, a full day to identify the appropriate recovery software. And that software was RStudio, not the RStudio if you're familiar with analytical engines, not that R server. It's R-Studio from R-Technologies. They do data recovery. That software was $70. I paid for it. Was able to see these drives. I'm going to unplug one just to show you. Was able to see both of these as a single volume. It was smart enough to recognize the USB connection. It saw the individual drives, and then it recognized the what they call RAID 0 configuration volume. And all I was able to do was then copy the software directly from that interface over to an extra drive. Like, for example, this extra 1 terabyte, or this is a 3 terabyte drive, and get all my data off these drives. And that was it. Now, going through this process, it took me a while to understand the terminology. People were talking about dynamic disks. People were mentioning striped volumes, spanned volumes, RAID 0. So it's important to get that terminology done, because when I was trying to recover my data, it didn't make sense, because I'd see solutions that can get data off dynamic disks. And there's this one company, EasyUS, I think it's called, or EasyUS. I'll put it up on the screen. And they sell software, and they came up as the #1 hit in Google. So I said, let me try that. I downloaded it, I paid for it, and it saw both of my drives, but it did not recognize it as a single volume. So after scanning the drives and then trying to copy the data, turns out that the data was useless. It was either corrupted. I think I was able to get a couple of images off of it, but most binary files I wasn't. And it's because of the way the RAID 0 configuration, I guess, spans the data across both drives. I'm not familiar with the configuration, but that software would not work. Okay, so if you run into that situation, immediately go to RStudio or R-Studio. Look for that software to help you with RAID data restriction or data recovery. The other thing to notice is that how I found this was after a number of searches. I found a website, Tom's Hardware, and a lot of people were saying, I'm sorry, to other people who had a similar problem, you're going to lose your data, you're going to lose your data. And then one person posted about R-Studio, and that's how I found about it. And I decided, let me write a blog and create a video, so hopefully if this happens again, you won't have to go through the problems that I did. So that's about it. I got my data back. I do have a bad drive though. If any of you know how I could get the data off of this, I purchased a USB 3.0 interface that you can insert this into, and it still did not recognize the drive, so chances are the hardware on this is bad. There are some data recovery services I'm getting in touch with, but if you know of anything that might be functional, there probably is some stuff within my documents or some templates that I use for creating videos that I could get off of here. So, leave it in the comments below and let me know. Other than that, thank you for your time, guys, and I'll see you in the next Musing. Take care.